Hello all, welcome to Paritranaya. In the previous two classes, we discussed about the political system, and we saw that any political system consists of three important wings: the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. So after that, we started discussing about the central legislature, which we call it as parliament. And in the parliament, we discussed about the various aspects. So parliament, what all it comprises of, that is Lok Sabha, Raj Sabha, and president. Then we saw the important positions: president, vice president, members of Lok Sabha, members of Raj Sabha, presiding officers. We discussed about Attorney General of India, ministers, and what is Council of Ministers. We saw about Prime Minister, leader of opposition in Lok Sabha and Raj Sabha. Then we discussed about how these people occupy these positions, through whether through election or through nomination of Lok Sabha members, of president, of Prime Minister, of Attorney General, ministers, etc. Then we saw the responsibility of Parliament. So the major responsibilities of Parliament are to make laws, and another one is to keep the government under check, or to have a control over the government. And next, we saw law. So what are laws? So how a bill will become an act, we saw about that. And we also discussed about the session and the recess period, and who will call someone, who will issue prorogue, next who will issue adjournment and adjournment sine. So everything we discussed in the previous class. We also saw about the languages in parliament. Next, we briefly saw about the qualifications required to become member of Lok Sabha, and similarly qualifications required to become member of Raj Sabha, as well as other aspects like resignation, etc. Then finally, we saw that there are three different types of bills: ordinary bill, money bill, and constitutional amendment bill. After that, we discussed that different types of majority are required to take different types of decision. For example, in case of ordinary bill, we require simple majority, and in case of constitutional amendment bill, we require special majority. So all these things we had discussion in the previous class. Next, we shall begin with this question. So can Parliament make laws on any subject? So already we have briefly discussed, but once again we shall touch these aspects. So can Parliament make laws on any subject? No, there are restrictions. It can make laws only on few subjects or on few topics. So which are those topics? So those topics which have been mentioned in 7th schedule. Okay, 7th schedule. So our 7th schedule, so at the start itself we have discussed that our constitution consists of, it consists of roughly around 450 articles, and next 12 schedules. So schedule 1, schedule 2, so on, schedule 7, next schedule 12. Totally 12 schedules. So now we are interested only in this 7th schedule. So what does this what kind of information does 7th schedule give us? So this 7th schedule, it maintains three lists. Okay, list 1, next list 2, next list 3. So this 7th schedule consists of three lists. So each and every list has certain topics or certain subjects. Generally we call them as subjects. So this list 1 is also called as union list. This list 1 is also called as union list. And list 2 is also called as state list. And list 3 is also called as concurrent list. So in each of these lists we have multiple subjects. So I'll not be writing all the subjects, just one or two examples. So in union list we have many subjects. Among those many subjects, I'll be listing two subjects. One is defense. Okay, defense. Next, another example I'll take of banking. Defense is a subject of union list. Similarly, banking is a subject of union list or list 1. Next, when it comes to list 2, let me take an example of list 2. Police. So police is a subject which is present in the state list or list 2. Similarly, I'll take health. Okay, health and police, these are the subjects which are present in list 2. Apart from these two subjects, there are many more subjects, but as an example I have taken only these two subjects. Next, in the concurrent list, or in list 3 I'll take a subject is present, that is education. Okay, that is education. There are many other subjects as well, but for time being I'll be taking only one example. Okay, one example. Now when it comes to parliament, it can make laws on union list, it can make laws on union list, it can make laws on the subjects which are present in the concurrent list, but it cannot make a law on the subjects of state list or list 2. Okay, very important. So from this what we understood, yes, parliament can make laws, and what is the procedure involved in making law? Lok Sabha has to pass it, Rajya Sabha has to pass it, then president has to sign it. So then bill will become act. But they cannot make laws on all the subjects. They can make only laws on the subjects which are present in union list and the subjects which are present in the concurrent list. They cannot make laws on the subjects which are present in list 2. It means parliament cannot make a law on a subject called as police. Parliament cannot make a law on a subject called as health. Okay, or health. In the forthcoming classes, we will be discussing that there are certain exceptions, but for a time being, we shall not focus on those exceptions. We shall assume that parliament cannot make laws on subjects of state list. Okay, so here we understood that parliament's power to make laws is limited. Okay, is limited. Next, joint sitting of two houses. So which are the two houses? The two houses are, when I say two houses, it means I am referring to Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. In detail we will be discussing later on, but for time being we shall only discuss about the superficial aspects. So we have seen that there are three different types of bills: ordinary bill, money bill, and constitutional amendment bill. Now we know for any of these bills to become act, they have to pass through Lok Sabha, they have to pass through Rajya Sabha, and finally president has to sign it. Sometimes what happens, one of the house will pass. Let us assume there is a bill, Lok Sabha will pass it, but Rajya Sabha is not ready to pass it. Rajya Sabha is not ready to pass it. Rajya Sabha is not happy with the content of that bill. Okay, with that bill. So now what happens? There is a difference of opinion between Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. When there is a difference of opinion between Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha with respect to a bill, then there is a provision to call a joint sitting. So in joint sitting, what happens? Rather than meeting separately, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha will sit together and discuss. So we know in Lok Sabha we have 545 members and in Rajya Sabha we have 245 members. So these Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha members together, that is 790 members together, they will sit and they will discuss. So that process we call it as joint sitting of two houses. One important thing that we need to remember here is whenever there is a dispute with respect to ordinary bill, then we can call joint sitting. If there is a difference of opinion with respect to money bill or difference of opinion with respect to constitutional amendment bill, then in these two cases we cannot call a joint sitting. So why is that so? It is beyond the scope of our discussion. But as per our constitution, a joint sitting can be called only in case of a difference of opinion for ordinary bill, and we cannot call a joint sitting in case of money bill and constitutional amendment bill. Okay. So this is the superficial, again superficial level. Later on we shall discuss in depth about the difference, the exact difference that exists between ordinary bill, money bill and constitutional amendment bill. So this was about joint sitting of the two houses and when can we call joint sitting. Next, motions. Again a very important topic. So whenever we want to initiate any kind of discussion in either Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha, it has to take place with the help of motion. Okay, it has to take place with the help of motion. For example, what are the different discussions that can take place in Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha? So one discussion would be discussion on a bill. So whenever we are making a law, then there are various provisions in the bill. So we need to check whether all those provisions are correct or not. Should we keep some provisions or should we remove them? So all these discussions will take place when we are making a law. Okay, when we are making a law. Apart from the discussions that happen during the making of law, there are other discussions as well. For example, if somewhere in some part of India, if floods happen, okay, if floods happen, or if there is an earthquake, so such things will be discussed, and if there is some terrorist attack, even those discussions will take place. Okay, so whenever a discussion has to take place in the parliament, so first it should begin with a motion. Okay, it should begin with a motion. Now let us assume that I want to introduce a bill, I want to bring a new law. Okay, new law. So as we know, how does it start? First it has to be passed either in Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha, and then it has to be signed by president. So let us assume I want to introduce a bill in Lok Sabha. Okay, in Lok Sabha. But how should I start that process? So let us assume I am the MP, I am a member of Lok Sabha. So in Lok Sabha, I am MP. So what I will do, I will move a motion, or I will submit a motion. Okay, I'll submit a motion. So what will be that motion regarding? I'll say that I want to move a bill. Okay, I want to move a bill. Let us assume bill is related to marriage. Okay, marriage bill. Let me take it as marriage bill. I want to bring some law related to marriage. Okay, marriage. To whom will I submit this motion? I'll submit this motion to Speaker. So as I am moving it in Lok Sabha, so I will submit it to Speaker. Suppose if I am Rajya Sabha member, and if I want to start discussion on a bill in Rajya Sabha, then I will submit the motion to Chairman. But now our discussion is confined to Lok Sabha. Okay, Lok Sabha. So MP will submit a motion to Speaker. Okay, will submit a motion to Speaker. Motion will be submitted to Speaker saying that I want to initiate a discussion on a bill regarding marriage. Okay, marriage. Now Speaker he may reject it. There are chances that he may reject it, or he may accept it. Once the Speaker accepts the proposal, then Speaker, what he will do, he will fix the date and time for discussion, because all the Lok Sabha members should meet and they should discuss. So he will fix the date and time. So once the date and time is fixed, what happens? On that particular day, discussion do take place, and after the discussion is over, that will be put to vote. And if more than 273 members say yes, then the bill will be considered as passed. Okay, passed by Lok Sabha. Okay, passed by Lok Sabha. So this is just an example to indicate that whenever we want to initiate any kind of discussion, it has to begin with a motion. And that motion has to be accepted by Speaker, followed by that discussion, and finally voting on that or passing of that particular bill. Okay. Similarly, when we want to take any kind of decision also, okay, so the same process applies. So there are many motions, but just for time being, I'll be focusing on just few important motions, okay, that are commonly used in Parliament. So here I'll be discussing these motions with respect to Lok Sabha. Okay, Lok Sabha. There are few motions which can be used only in Lok Sabha and not in Rajya Sabha. So which are all those motions we'll be discussing again later on. But for the time being, at a superficial level, let us try to understand few of the important motions. So here first we shall start with privilege motion. Okay, privilege motion. In the previous class, we saw that the responsibility of Lok Sabha is, or Parliament in general, is to make laws, and also at the same time to keep the government under control. Now here we have Lok Sabha, and next Lok Sabha wants to keep government under control. Okay, so when I say government, whom I will be referring to? I will be referring to Council of Ministers headed by Prime Minister. I want to keep the government under control. Who? Lok Sabha wants to keep government under control. So what are the various tools used? So there are various tools, but here I will be discussing about only one tool, that is questions. Questions during question hour. So Lok Sabha will ask questions. How Lok Sabha will ask question? For example, one Lok Sabha member will ask a question. So that question will be targeted to a particular minister. For example, let us assume there is a scheme called as Manarega, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. So this scheme is implemented by Ministry of Rural Development. Ministry of Rural Development. So a member of Lok Sabha will ask a question to Rural Development Minister. So how much amount you have spent in this year, okay, towards this scheme. Now the minister will give a information like somewhere we have spent 10 crore, okay, 10 crore. So he will ask question and he will get a reply. Now later on this MP will get to know that the actual expenditure was not 10 crore but only 5 crore, okay, 5 crore. Means Ministry of Rural Development has spent only 5 crore, but it has given a false information that they have spent 10 crore. So now a privilege has been breached. What is that privilege? As a member of parliament. So who is a member of parliament? He is a people's representative. Okay, he is representing the people. So when he is representing us, he should get proper information. It means he is not getting a proper information. So his privilege is being breached. In such case, a MP will stand and he will move a motion called as privilege motion. Okay, privilege has been breached. So a particular minister has given a wrong information, and as a MP, my privilege has been breached. Okay, so in such when false information is provided, they can move privilege motion. Okay, privilege motion. Again in detail we will be discussing later on. Next, calling attention motion. Okay, calling attention motion. So I'll take with the, we shall discuss with a different example. Now see here. Here in case of calling attention, we want to seek the attention of the minister. We want to seek the attention of the minister. Now let us assume we already discussed in the previous class that there are close to 50 ministers. So 50 ministers, okay, normal ministers plus one prime minister, plus one prime minister. Now let us assume that somewhere an earthquake has taken place. So the management of the earthquake and rescuing operation and all, it is a responsibility of Home Ministry. Okay, so I will consider Home Ministry. Home Ministry, and Home Ministry is headed by a minister. A minister. Now, if the rescue operation or something, if it is not taking place properly, one of the member of Lok Sabha, one MP will stand up and he will raise a question, okay, or he will move a motion. So he'll call, that motion will be called as calling attention motion. So here he wants to seek the attention of whom? He wants to seek the attention of Home Minister. He wants to seek the attention of the Home Minister. He will say, Home Minister, what you are doing? So an earthquake has taken place and rescue operation is not taking place properly. So what are you doing? You are not doing your job properly. So in order to bring the attention of the minister, this calling attention motion will be moved in Lok Sabha. Okay, in Lok Sabha. Next, adjournment motion. Okay, similar to seeking the attention of minister, here we want to bring to the attention of the house an urgent issue. Okay, an urgent issue. For example, let us assume in Lok Sabha we are discussing on a particular bill. Let us assume marriage bill. Okay, marriage bill. Discussions are going on, and suddenly they'll come to know that an terrorist attack has taken place in some part of the country, or Jammu and Kashmir. So now when a terrorist attack has taken place, so a discussion on terrorist attack and has more priority as compared to marriage bill. So one MP will stand up and he will raise adjournment motion. Okay, adjournment motion. He says that in a particular place a terrorist attack has taken place, so we need to pause the discussion which is going on marriage bill. So this will be paused. This will be paused and discussion on terrorist attack will take place. Terrorist attack will take place. Okay. So here what we are doing, the house, Lok Sabha was discussing about marriage bill. Now its attention has been diverted and its attention has been given to the new attack, terrorist attack which has taken place. So in order to divert this attention of the house, whatever the motion we move, we call it as adjournment motion. Again, in the few forthcoming classes, we will be discussing in detail about the adjournment motion. Okay. Next, no confidence motion. So again, it's a very important motion. So this no confidence motion, it can be moved only in Lok Sabha. It cannot be moved in Rajya Sabha. Okay. So we have seen that in Lok Sabha we have totally 545 members. So we have seen about government. So government consists of what? Council of Ministers plus Prime Minister. So Council of Ministers 50 plus 1 Prime Minister. Okay, plus 1 Prime Minister. Now who will form the government? We have seen a majority party. Yesterday we took an example. So let us assume BJP, there are 300 BJP MPs. There are 300 MPs who belong to BJP, and there are 245 MPs who belong to Congress. Now which government will be formed? BJP government. Why? Because the required strength is 273 and they have 300 MPs. So among these 300, 51 people, okay, 51 people will become ministers. Okay, 50 will become normal ministers and 1 will become Prime Minister. Okay, Prime Minister. Now, once a government is formed, we have already seen Lok Sabha will keep a check on the government. It means Lok Sabha will support the government as long as government is working properly. If government is not working properly, then what Lok Sabha can do? Lok Sabha can remove the government. Okay. When I say remove the government, it means Council of Ministers headed by Prime Minister, they will be removed, and new Council of Ministers headed by Prime Minister will come. Okay, Prime Minister will come. So normally this happens only when there is a coalition government. So in such type of governments, this kind of no confidence motion, generally it will not get passed. Why? Because here BJP enjoys a what? Absolute majority. So more than 273 members, it has 300 seats. So now, even if a no confidence motion is accepted, the chances of it being passed will be very, very less. Okay, very, very less. Here what we need to understand is, whenever a no confidence motion is passed, suppose if no confidence motion is passed, whether it is good for the government or bad for the present government, it is bad for the present government. Why? Because the present government will fall and a new government will come. That's why passing of no confidence motion is not good for the government, present government. Next, motion of thanks. Okay, so motion of thanks at the superficial we shall discuss. So every year, President will address both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Okay, address Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. So during his address, he will be mentioning about the various government schemes and all. Okay, otherwise we shall not go into the details of all those things. So every year, President will address both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Once President's address is over, so President's address means President will speak to the members of both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Once his speech is over, okay, so a motion of thanks will be moved. Okay, it means it will be like thanking the President. Whatever the speech President has made, so in order to thank the President, a motion will be moved. So if this motion is passed, then it's better. Okay, it means Lok Sabha has faith on the government. Lok Sabha has faith on the government. If this motion does not get passed, it means Lok Sabha does not have faith on the government. Okay, does not have faith on the government. So motion of thanks, if it is passed, then it is good for the government. Okay, it is good for the government. If it does not get passed, then it is bad. So here what we understood at the superficial level, if no confidence motion is passed, then it is bad for the government, and if no motion of thanks is passed, then it is good for the present government. Okay, government. Again, in detail, we'll be discussing about these aspects later on. Next, another important aspect of parliament is proposing or passing the budget. Okay, budget. So what does this budget consist of? This budget consists of the upcoming receipts and the upcoming expenditure. Means in the upcoming year, how much money what approximately we will be receiving, and what will be our expenditure, and what will be our expenditure. So generally a financial year, we know that financial year, it starts from April 1. If we consider this financial year, it starts from April 1, 2023 to March 31, 2024. Okay. So when we speak about budget of a particular year, then we will be referring to this year. Okay. So in this year, how much amount we will be receiving and how much amount we will be spending. Okay. So in Constitution, we do not have a term called as budget, but we have a term called as annual financial statement. Okay. Annual financial statement. Next, when it comes to budget, there will be income and there will be expenditure. So to this income, we call it as receipts. We call it as receipts. And whatever we are spending, we call it as expenditure. We call it as expenditure. Now again, in case of receipts, there are two different types of receipts. One is revenue receipt, another one is capital receipt. Okay, capital receipt. So here we have taken just one example each for revenue receipt and capital receipt. So income tax, every year, whatever the tax we pay on income tax, so that will be part of, that will go to government in the form of revenue receipt. For example, if I am earning 10 lakh rupees, then income tax I have to pay, let us assume 1 lakh rupees. So in the 10 lakh, I will pay 1 lakh as income tax. So this income tax goes to government. But in what form? In the form of revenue receipt. Okay, revenue. Next, we have one more receipt, capital receipt. So I have taken one example, that is disinvestment proceeds. Okay, disinvestment proceeds. So what is disinvestment proceeds? Let us assume government government owns many companies. I'll take one company, NTPC, National Thermal Power Corporation. Okay, NTPC. Now sometimes whatever the amount the government is getting through revenue receipts, it will not be sufficient. It wants more money to spend. So at that time, what it will do? It will go for some kind of disinvestment and all. So what is disinvestment? Now this NTPC, let us assume it is 100% owned by government. 100% owned by government. Just in order to make our discussions easier, let us assume that the value of this NTPC company is 1 crore. Okay. The actual value is what? Thousands of crores. But just to make our discussions easier, let us take the value of NTPC is 1 crore. Now, government wants 25 lakh rupees. Apart from the revenue receipts, it wants extra 25 lakh rupees. So what it will do, if it sells 25% of the shares, if it sells 25% of the shares to some other private party, then what happens? It will get 25 lakh rupees. Okay, it will get 25 lakh rupees. So what the government will do, it will keep 75% shares and it will sell 25% shares. When it sells 25% shares, it will receive 25 lakh rupees. So this 25 lakh rupees, where it will go? It will go to government in what form? In the form of capital receipt. Okay, capital receipt. So what all constitutes the revenue receipt, what all constitutes capital receipt, we will be discussing later on. Okay. For time being, at the superficial, we understood that when it comes to receipts, there are two different types of receipts. One is revenue receipt, another one is capital receipt. Capital receipt. Next, similarly, when it comes to expenditure, whatever the government is spending, so that is also classified into revenue expenditure and capital expenditure. So an example of revenue expenditure is salary of employees. Now whatever the salary the government pays to an IAS officer or IPS officer or anyone, so all this salary, it is an expenditure on part of the government, and this salary constitutes what? Revenue expenditure. This salary constitutes revenue expenditure. Next, we have capital expenditure. For example, whatever the amount the government spends on construction of road, we call it as capital expenditure. There are many examples of capital expenditure. For example, if government purchases a new helicopter for its army, again it's an example of capital expenditure. So there are many examples. All those diverse examples we will be discussing later on. Okay, we'll be discussing later on. At the superficial level, we shall understand that when we say revenue expenditure, it means the amount which has been spent by the government, it will not return back. Okay, it will not return back. And in case of capital expenditure, whatever you are spending, an asset will be created. So if you use the fund for the road construction, so the road will remain for at least 10 or 20 years. So it's an asset which has been created by the government. So whenever we are spending something towards asset creation, so we call it as capital expenditure. Capital expenditure. Okay. So here we saw about receipts and expenditure. Next, accounts maintained by government. So as an individual, we also maintain different types of accounts. Okay, savings account, and businessmen maintain current account. In a similar fashion, government also maintains different types of accounts. So there are three important accounts. One is called as Consolidated Fund of India. So this account is mentioned in Article 266 of the Constitution. Again, we have public account. This is mentioned in Article 266 of the Constitution. Then we have Contingency Fund of India, which is mentioned in Article 267. Now let us try to understand these accounts at the superficial level. So now, income and expenditure, all the government income and all the expenditure will take place from Consolidated Fund of India, or majority of the income and majority of the expenditure of the government, it takes place from Consolidated Fund of India. Now we saw that government receives receipts. Okay, so receipts are of two types: revenue receipt and capital receipt. So both these receipts, whatever the income will come, it will go into Consolidated Fund of India. Consolidated Fund of India. We also saw about expenditure. In expenditure, we saw about salaries of employees and the expenditure towards road construction. So this amount, that is expenditure towards salary and expenditure towards road construction, where it will come from? It will come from Consolidated Fund of India. Consolidated Fund of India. So here, very important thing that we need to remember here is, whenever we want to withdraw amount, from the Consolidated Fund of India, okay, so for this we'll call it as appropriation. So we'll not use a term called as the withdrawal, but we'll call appropriation. Whenever we want to appropriate the funds from Consolidated Fund of India, we require permission of Lok Sabha. Whenever we want to withdraw amount, or whenever we want to appropriate amount out of the Consolidated Fund of India to spend on road construction or for some other purpose, then we require permission of Lok Sabha. Okay, permission of Lok Sabha. Now, public account. What is this public account? Now, I'll take just one example. So, in our monthly salary, we pay some amount towards Provident Fund. So that we can receive in the form of a pension after our retirement. After 6 years, we can receive it as in the form of a pension. So every month, whatever the amount gets deducted, for example, if I have 10,000 rupees salary, then 1,000 rupees will be credited into Provident Fund. So this Provident Fund amount, where it will be stored? It will be stored in an account of government called as public account. Okay, public account. This is just an example. Now, next question. When I want to withdraw from public account, do we require permission of Lok Sabha? A very important question, because we saw that whenever we wanted to withdraw amount from the Consolidated Fund of India or appropriate amount from the Consolidated Fund of India, we required permission of Lok Sabha. But here, when we want to withdraw amount from the public account, we do not require Lok Sabha permission. There are few cases, wherein that permission may be required. But which are those cases, we'll be discussing later on. But for the time being, for majority of the cases, when we are withdrawing amount from the public account, we do not require permission of the Lok Sabha. Next, Contingency Fund of India. Very important. Now, we have seen that in case of Consolidated Fund of India, if at all we want to withdraw, then we require permission of Lok Sabha. But in order to take the permission of Lok Sabha should be in session. Only when Lok Sabha is in session, what we can do? We can take its permission. So let us assume it is a month of January. It's a month of January. Then Lok Sabha will not be in session. It will be in recess. So all of a sudden, let us assume there is an earthquake. In some part of India. Okay. So in order to tackle this earthquake, we require funds. Okay, we require funds. But in January month, if we want to seek the permission of the Lok Sabha, then we have to wait for 2 to 3 months until the Lok Sabha meets. So that will be too long a period. So immediately for the expenditure, we require amount. Okay, so that amount, immediately whatever we will be spending, some amount will be maintained in contingency fund of India. Okay, contingency fund of India. So this amount will be withdrawn and it will be spent on earthquake. Okay, in tackling the earthquake. Okay, tackling the earthquake. Now, who has permission to withdraw amount from the contingency fund of India? Very important. Here it is. President. Okay, President. So in order to withdraw the amount from contingency fund of India, we require the permission of President. So here we saw, in case of consolidated fund of India, Lok Sabha's permission is required. In case of public account, so no permission of Lok Sabha is required. Whereas to withdraw amount from the contingency fund of India, we do not require the permission of Lok Sabha. Just President has that power to withdraw the amount from contingency fund of India. Okay, fund of India. So contingency amount is very small. It consists of around 500 crore rupees. Okay, 500 crore rupees. So to meet urgent unforeseen expenditure. Okay, so this is a urgent unforeseen expenditure, earthquake. Okay, so this 500 crore will be fixed. So whenever amount is spent from this contingency fund, when the Lok Sabha meets, so at that time, whatever amount has been spent, let us assume in this 500 crore, 200 crore has been spent and only 300 crore is remaining. At this moment, what happens? When the Lok Sabha meets, it will transfer that 200 crore rupees from consolidated fund of India to contingency fund of India. It means at any point of time, contingency fund of India should have that 500 crore rupees to meet urgent unforeseen expenditure. Okay, expenditure. So here we saw about consolidated fund of India, public account and contingency fund of India. Next, we have another form of expenditure. We call it as charged expenditure. Okay, charged expenditure. So we saw that whatever the spending the government makes, so we saw revenue expenditure and capital expenditure. We also saw that whenever we are withdrawing amount from the consolidated fund of India, okay, towards this expenditure, we require permission of Lok Sabha. Whenever we are withdrawing amount from the consolidated fund of India for expenditure, that is either it may be capital expenditure or revenue expenditure, then we have to seek the permission of the Lok Sabha. But there are certain aspects for which permission of Lok Sabha is not required when we are withdrawing the amount. Okay, when we are withdrawing the amount, it means in some cases Lok Sabha's permission is not required to withdraw the amount. Okay, so such expenditure we call it as charged expenditure. Such expenditure we call it as charged expenditure. Then which are the situations when this will arise? Okay, an example is interest payment. So whatever the loan the government has taken, so in the previous year, so interest has to be given back after a year. So this interest payment automatically it will go from the consolidated fund of India. So in order to pay the interest, we need not take the permission of the Lok Sabha. So this interest payment is an example of charged expenditure. It is also called as non-hotable because here vote of Lok Sabha is not required. Okay, is not required. Next, similarly, one more example is salaries of the judges of the Supreme Court. Now, supposedly, if every time in order to give salary to the judge of a Supreme Court, if we seek the permission of the Lok Sabha, then the independence of the judiciary will be compromised. So later on we will be discussing about what is judiciary and what is judicial independence. So suppose if a Supreme Court judge does not give a decision in favor of Lok Sabha, okay, in favor of Lok Sabha, then what happens? Lok Sabha may withhold the salary of Supreme Court judge. So now if they withhold the salary of the Supreme Court judge, then the judicial independence will be compromised. So that is why in order to uphold the judicial independence, their salary will not be at the mercy of the Lok Sabha. Okay, the judges of the Supreme Court's salary will not be at the mercy of the Lok Sabha. So every year automatically salary from the Consolidated Fund of India will be transferred to the account of the judges of the Supreme Court. Okay. So again, this is charged expenditure. These are just two examples. There are other expenditures also which constitute or which are part of charged expenditure. Okay. So here what we understood, when we are withdrawing from the Consolidated Fund of India, in few of the cases we need permission. Okay, permission, and in few cases we do not need permission. And the spending which happens without requiring the permission of the Lok Sabha, we call it as charged expenditure. Okay, charged expenditure. Next, there are certain committees, parliamentary committees. So why these committees are there? Now we have 50 ministers plus one prime minister. Okay. So in order to help the government, as they will be overburdened, in order to reduce their effort, there are some committees which will be formed, which will help the government, So those committees are parliamentary committees. Again, there are many committees. We will be discussing about them in detail later on. For time being, I will be focusing on only few committees. So where are these committees mentioned? Whether they have been mentioned in the Constitution? No, they are not mentioned anywhere in the Constitution. But we have rules book. There is a rules book for Lok Sabha and there is a rules book for Rajya Sabha. In these rules book, we find the mention of parliamentary committees. Okay, parliamentary committees. Now next, there are few committees which are joint committees and there are few committees which are separate committees. So when I say joint committee, it means it consists of members of both Lok Sabha as well as Rajya Sabha. When I say separate committees, then it means we have one committee in Lok Sabha and one committee in Rajya Sabha. We have separate committees in both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. So an example I have taken, Public Accounts Committee. So this Public Accounts Committee is a joint committee. It consists of Lok Sabha members. How many members? 15 plus Rajya Sabha members. How many? Total 7. So totally there are 22 members. There are 22 members in Public Accounts Committee. So what is this Public Account Committee? What is the responsibility of Public Accounts Committee? These things we will be discussing in detail in the forthcoming classes. Now here at superficial level, it's a joint committee consisting of members of both Lok Sabha as well as Rajya Sabha. Okay. Next, separate committee wherein both Lok Sabha also has a committee, Rajya Sabha also has a committee. So here this Business Advisory Committee. So we have a Business Advisory Committee in Lok Sabha, a separate committee. Similarly, we have a separate committee in Rajya Sabha, Business Advisory Committee. Okay. Again, the responsibility of Business Advisory Committee we will be discussing later on. Okay. So here we got to know that there are different committees, parliamentary committees, to aid the government, to help the government. Next, important, parliamentary privileges. Okay. So as an ordinary citizen, my rights and the members of Lok Sabha's rights are not same. Okay. They enjoy certain special privileges. Because they are representatives of people, and in order to carry out the work on our behalf, so they require certain special immunities and special privileges. Okay, special privileges. So what are those special privileges? We will be discussing later on. Now, to whom does it apply? Whatever the special privileges I have mentioned, to whom does it apply? So it applies to the two houses of parliament. So which are the two houses of parliament? Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Next, their members, it means MPs, members of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Next, committees, as we saw parliamentary committees. So these privileges apply to committees as well as their members. Okay, their members. Next, it also applies to Attorney General of India. So we have already seen in the previous class that Attorney General is the lawyer of central government. Okay, central government. Next, these privileges, they also extend to union ministers. Okay, union ministers. Next, these privileges again they have been classified into two types: collective privileges and individual privileges. So what are collective privileges? An example of a collective privilege: right to publish reports or prohibit. For example, if we consider Lok Sabha, then Lok Sabha members will sit and discuss. At the same time, let us assume in Lok Sabha, some media people are sitting. Okay, Now, whatever the discussions that take place in Lok Sabha, so Lok Sabha can put a restriction that you cannot publish these things in the newspaper. Okay, they can put some kind of restrictions. So why? Because there is some sensitive matter is being discussed in the Lok Sabha, and Lok Sabha has that right that which is the information that can be published and which is the information that should not be published or that should be prohibited from being published. Okay, so this is the collective privilege. Okay, this is the collective privilege, means common privilege of all the members together. Collective privilege. I have an example. Next we have individual privileges. What are those individual privileges? For example, now as a common man, if I commit any kind of crime, okay, if I am involved in some kind of robbery, then police can immediately arrest me. Okay, can immediately arrest me. But supposedly if a member of Lok Sabha is involved in some kind of robbery or in some other criminal activity, so he cannot be arrested immediately. He cannot be arrested immediately. There are some restrictions when he can be arrested, when he cannot be arrested. Okay, all those things in detail we will be looking on later on. But here what we will understand here is, as an ordinary people we can be arrested immediately, but as a member of Lok Sabha or Raj Sabha they cannot be arrested immediately. So these are the special privileges which the members of parliament will enjoy. Okay, enjoy, important. Next, very important is, when we started our discussion of parliament, so we discussed that parliament consists of Lok Sabha, Raj Sabha and president. Lok Sabha, Raj Sabha and president. So here when it comes to privileges, we saw that the privileges do extend to what? Members of Lok Sabha, members of Raj Sabha, committees, their members, Attorney General of India as well as ministers. But the privileges do not extend to President of India. Very important. Parliamentary privileges do not extend to President. Then whether President does not have any kind of privileges, okay, President do have privileges, and we will be discussing about the privileges of the President when we start discussing about a separate topic on President. Okay, separate topic on President. Next. So after all these discussions, now finally we have seen Lok Sabha as well as Raj Sabha. So whether both Lok Sabha and Raj Sabha have equal powers? Okay. Here we need to understand that in few aspects both Lok Sabha and Raj Sabha have equal powers, and there are few other aspects wherein Lok Sabha is superior to Raj Sabha, and there are few other aspects where Raj Sabha is superior to what? Lok Sabha. So there are many different subjects wherein they are equal, and Lok Sabha is powerful than Raj Sabha and all, but here we have taken just few examples. So in case of the aspect where Raj Sabha has an equal status with Lok Sabha, when it comes to ordinary bills, so both of them are equal, Raj Sabha, Lok Sabha. So equal in the sense an ordinary bill can be introduced either in Raj Sabha or Lok Sabha. Okay, so both of them is okay. It can be introduced either first in Lok Sabha or in Raj Sabha. So both of them are equally powerful. Next, president's election. We have seen that at a superficial level. So our members of Lok Sabha and members of Raj Sabha will participate in the election of president. So there is no discrimination. Both members of Lok Sabha and Raj Sabha have equal power, so they can participate in the election of president. Again, in detail, we will be discussing about the election procedure of president later on. Okay, later on. Next, we shall discuss about the aspect wherein Lok Sabha enjoys more powers than Rajya Sabha. Now, when it comes to money bill, again in detail about the money bill we will be discussing later on. But for time being, we shall understand that when it comes to money bill, Lok Sabha has more power compared to Rajya Sabha. It means a money bill can be introduced only in Lok Sabha. It cannot be introduced in Rajya Sabha. It cannot be introduced in Rajya Sabha. Similarly, as we have seen, a no confidence motion. So a no confidence motion, it involves removing the government and bringing a new government. So this power is enjoyed only by Lok Sabha and not by Rajya Sabha. So a no confidence motion can be moved in Lok Sabha, but it cannot be moved in Rajya Sabha. It cannot be moved in Rajya Sabha. Okay. So here we have seen where Lok Sabha is superior to Rajya Sabha. Next, Rajya Sabha enjoys some special powers. Okay, special powers. So what is that? Now we have seen that in seventh schedule, there are three lists. List 1, list 2, list 3. Okay, we have already seen that Lok Sabha can make laws on the subjects of list 1. Lok Sabha can make laws on subjects of list 2. And we have seen that Lok Sabha cannot, Parliament cannot make laws on the subjects of list 2. So an example, few examples of subjects of list 2 are police and health. So these are the subjects which are present in list 2 or state list So normally parliament cannot make laws on these subjects, okay, on these subjects. But later on we will be discussing in detail how exactly, okay, how exactly all these things work. But here at the superficial level we shall understand that Rajya Sabha, okay, this is our parliament. Rajya Sabha can give permission to parliament. What kind of permission? To make laws on state subjects. Rajya Sabha can give permission. Rather than saying give permission, I will say Rajya Sabha will empower parliament to make laws on the state subject. Okay, it will mention that you can make a law on subject called as police. Okay, police. So if it empowers the parliament, then what happens? Ordinarily parliament which is not empowered to make laws on the state subjects, now parliament will become empowered to make laws on the state subject. Okay, state subject. So this empowering of parliament can be made only by Rajya Sabha. Lok Sabha cannot empower the parliament to legislate on the state subject. Okay, to legislate on the state subject. So this is a special power enjoyed by Rajya Sabha. Similarly, creation of all India services. Now when it comes to all India services, IAS, Indian Administrative Service Officers, and IPS, Indian Police Service Officers, they are considered as all India service officers. So if a similar kind of service we want to create, okay, if we want to create a new all India service, then that creation of all India service, that power lies with Rajya Sabha. Rajya Sabha has a power to create a new all India service. Okay, all India service. Okay, so here we discussed about the aspects wherein Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha enjoy equal status, and in few cases wherein Lok Sabha is superior to Rajya Sabha, and in few cases or a few examples where Rajya Sabha has special powers. Okay, so similarly in the forthcoming class we will be continuing with the next part. Thank you.